and will be available via the Council's website to be viewed as soon as possible following the meeting. Everyone participating in the meeting will be attending either in the Council chambers or from remote locations. Please could everybody ensure that their mobile phones are switched off or to a silent mode. The meeting's agenda pack can be viewed on the Council's website. Members and officers will be speaking at various points during the meeting, and those speaking may switch their microphones on at that point. At all other times, attendees should keep their microphones off. Please could those members attending remotely keep their cameras on for the duration of the meeting. If any members or officers wish to raise a point or question, they should press the hands up icon at the top right hand of the Microsoft Teams and Windows, and I will come to you in the order I receive the request. Please lower your hands once you have finished speaking. Please do not use your microphone until I invite you to do so. Officers from Democratic Services will be supporting the meeting. I would also ask the officers to introduce themselves as and when I invite them to speak during the course of the meeting. I will now proceed to the agenda business. So first item I have is apologies for absence, please. I have received apologies from Councillor Paul Davis and Councillor Howell Williams. Are there any other apologies? Yes. Councillor Williams?
Thank you very much. Apologies, I need to leave at 10 to 12.
Councillor Ross Thomas?
Yeah, good morning, Chair. Diolch. I need to pop out at 11, but hopefully I can come back. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gebbie?
Thank you very much, Chair. The leader will be joining us. He is slightly late there. He's involved in another meeting at the minute.
Thank you. Next item I've got is declaration of interest. Can I have any declaration of interest, please? No. I would like to declare an interest on item 8, which is I am a member of Unison, which is the organisation that has put forward one of the charters that we're asking to sign. Personal. Okay, moving on to the approval of minutes. Before we agree the approval of these minutes, there were some action points that were raised at the last meeting, and we don't seem to have had a response. So going forward, can I suggest that when we have this committee meeting, that we add action points, who is going to be responsible for providing the response, and a time frame. So looking at the minutes, there were quite a few action raised, and we don't seem to have had any response. It was mainly regarding to the discrimination at school reporting forms. We raised the issues that there were racism was not the only discrimination in schools. There were other characters that needed to be reported if there was bullying going on or any form of discrimination. So did anybody want to respond to that before we move on? No. Okay. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, in that case?
I'm happy to move. So for officers in attendance, we would like to have an understanding by next committee of how things are going to be actioned and some outcomes from the minutes, because we need to understand the questions we're asked. If we haven't been given the information, we need to get that information to us, please. But I'm happy to move, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy.
Happy to second.
Thank you. That's moved and second. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to get my agenda. Agenda item 4, remit of the Cabinet Committee, Equalities and Employee Relations. Paul, are you moving that? Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. For the purpose of the recording, my name is Paul Miles. I'm the Group Manager for Human Resources and Organisational Development. So, The purpose of this report is to confirm the remit of the Cabinet Committee Equalities and Employee Relations and identify items to be included in the forward work programme. It was agreed to revise the terms of reference of the Cabinet Committee Equalities and rename it to Cabinet Committee Equalities and Employee Relations, and the terms of reference that were agreed are attached in Appendix 1. The intention is, in addition to the existing reports, the committee will receive quarterly reports on the authority's workforce to include items such as absence, appraisals and other performance-related statistics. The committee can also consider and review the health and wellbeing resources available to employees and receive statistical information on engagement with those services. Annual reports will be presented to the committee to update on a number of things, such as our Grow Your Own schemes with graduates and apprentices, other organisational development matters and staff training opportunities. There will also be an opportunity for the recognised trade unions to be invited to provide annual feedback and to facilitate the development of industrial relations and partnership working. Item 3.6, I won't go through it all, which is in the pack. Item 3.6 sets out the proposal for the reports to be brought to future meetings during the year, and this will include what is set out there. In addition, will include the rolling programme of policy review that we undertake as HR, so we'll bring those documents forward as well. And obviously they'll come forward to the committee for approval at the appropriate time. So I'd just like to take you to the recommendation of the report that the information contained is noted and agree the agenda items set out in paragraph 3.6.
Thank you, Paul. So I've got the deputy who would like to ask a question.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm happy to move the report first and foremost. Thanks very much, Paul. Just a query from me, please, and possibly an amendment. And that is because in April 24 last year, we made care experienced children of the County Borough a protected characteristic, and we haven't referenced it anywhere, either in the main body of the report as part of the remit of the council or in the appendix. So I do think it's something that we need to consider, and I think we need to consider how we're going to understand the implications of what work is going on within the directorates to bring it back to this committee, please. Thank you.
Paul, please.
Yes, absolutely fine to include that. Just to note, in the next report there is some information on that, but again, happy to amend and include some work on that to 3.6.
Thank you, Paul, because this report actually outlines what the remit of this committee is, so it's really important to have that in there. Thank you. So next I've got Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Paul, for the report. I just wanted to clarify really that 3.6 doesn't limit what this committee will look at, because I think it's great to delineate all of these reports that we're getting, particularly the annual reports we receive every year. But as I've raised previously, I think this committee could do a lot more and have a lot more of an impact more widely on equalities across our borough. So I just wondered, and it may be an amendment to say that this is not limited to these reports, but includes these reports. So I just wanted to check that it is the intention of the Cabinet and officers to ensure that wider agendas are part of the programme of reports for this committee, and it's not just limited to what is delineated in 3.6.
Paul, do you want to come back into that, please?
Yeah, thank you. Happy with that. We've set out what we know we'll provide, but again, if it needs to be amended, we can pick that up on a meeting by meeting basis if it needs something additional to be brought in.
I think that's what we tend to do with the other scrutiny meeting, don't we? We kind of look at the work programme and hopefully we can, as a committee, say, do we need to add something else for the forthcoming meeting? Just before I bring you back in, Paul, I'd like to welcome the leader who has joined the meeting now.
Thank you. Just to add that the majority are workforce reports, but some are delivered by colleagues in the Equalities team. So, I think we're all in agreement with that. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, can I bring you in, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I'm happy to second the report, and thank you, Paul, for it. I just want to clarify for the recording again, because obviously the committee's remit has changed, where it's now Cabinet Equalities and Employee Relations, yeah? I just want to clarify what data will be included in the HR and OD quarterly reports. How does it differ from the previous reports that this committee has had? And also, I notice we will be reviewing the data a couple of months after the cut-off date of each quarter, so it's not in real time. What I'd like to understand is what plans are in place to start working towards real-time data, and also what is the process in pulling the data together, who pulls the data together, and how long does it take? And with the schedule of meetings, should they be reviewed and considered to reflect real-time data? Because we are not in real time, and we are looking at reports 2 months old, apart from when we go into the April meeting, which is only 1 month old, because the cut-off is the 31st of March. So it can be pulled a month in advance. So, why are we waiting for meetings to review quarterly data? That's old data.
Paul?
I think a couple of points there, if I can start perhaps at the top. The workforce data, which I can comment on, okay, so some of it comes from other areas. The workforce data, we take a cut as of the end of each quarter. Okay, so that's how we report for everything, and we continue to do that. In terms of our timing, so who you asked who produces a report, produced by myself, Angela from HR Service, and a number of us in the team there to make sure we pull that data out. How long it takes will vary depending on the time in the year, okay? Because whilst we always intend to report, pull the information out as swiftly as possible, and I'll come on to what reports come out, some we're reliant on input coming into our system from services in terms of absence information. There's usually a bit of a delay with that coming, not a delay, there's a lag due to staff returns coming in. Even though some of it is entered online, we have to allow managers time. So we do wait a small period at the end of the quarter just to ensure the information is up to date. The time of the year is really important because it actually depends where we are with some other major pieces of work. So naturally, we have no control over national pay awards, but when the pay awards come in, we have to decide our priorities within the HR service to ensure we can get everything accurately put across for our workforce. So we continue to juggle those priorities to make sure we can continue with our reporting, but also with some of our very frontline and busy periods. In terms of what intends to be included, I think absence information, appraisal completion, and we'll look at the other performance measures that we tend to produce and put them into the report. And should, I think an earlier comment, more information be required or wanted, we can look to include that in future reports. The final point on the timing, whilst we will have the information completed within a few weeks of the end of the quarter, we have set them out based on the structure of the meetings, which I understand was set for us to the timetable was set for us to bring to. So unless we review the timetable to make the meetings more succinct with the end of quarters, but I understood the 6 meetings a year, I think that's what's being proposed here, will come through. I would say that I think not every meeting will have, if there's 6 meetings, naturally there won't be quarterly information in all of those meetings, and there'll be other information we'll bring forward. Okay.
Thank you, Paul. Is that okay, Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Paul, for that explanation. Can I ask, what are we doing to try and get real-time data? What are the plans in place to try and actually work on a real-time data process? And also, finally, with regards to the information, absence, delighted to hear that absence and appraisals will now be included. Can I ask, do we do exit interviews? And could I actually make sure that that is included as well? And if there are any themes occurring from the results of exit interviews as well, please. Thank you.
So in terms of the real-time information, we have to do a little bit of work to prepare it from its raw format into the summary information that will be presented. But in terms of real-time, it is fairly accurate in terms of that cut-off period, because we are measuring a quarter's information. We're not measuring it on a daily basis. We are measuring on a quarter. So it is as up-to-date as it can be, given resources and priorities at that time. But we are fairly swift in turning it round. It's just the time into the meetings may not feel like that. The exit interviews, yes, we do conduct exit interviews, but they are voluntary, okay, in terms of staff completing them. We have a number of methods in which we capture that information on how we ask staff when they're leaving the organisation to complete the surveys. But we do have information, and we can start bringing some detail on that in terms of, like you say, themes and general information on that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Yeah.
Okay. Deputy?
Thanks very much, Chair. On the back of Councillor Good's comments, I think it's important that we recognise that and actually introduce a slight amendment to 3.6. Committee is scheduled to have 6 meetings, and at the end, and others as identified by committee members throughout the year. I think that gives, it's very clear then. It doesn't get lost in translation if we've got that amendment in there. So if Cabinet colleagues are happy with that, because we do need seconders for any of my amendments, please.
Can I have a seconder, please, for the 2 amendments?
I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so all I can't see any more hands up. I think they're historical hands. It's been moved and seconded. All in favour of the reports?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much. Moving on to the agenda, item 5. Over back to you again, Paul, on annual report on equality in the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We present this annual report on equalities in the workforce for the year 24-25. So, as you'll be aware, the annual report is brought to committee each year to provide an update on data and information with regards to the council workforce. The information provided is a snapshot as of the 31st of March 25, and it assists us in meeting our statutory duties and obligations in relation to the Equalities Act, as well as public sector equality duty and Welsh language standards. I think you'll have heard me mention this in the past, but just to mention, where numbers are below 5 in relation to a protected characteristic, within the appendices, they're replaced by an asterisk to protect anonymity. So there's 3 appendices attached. Appendix 1 gives you the dashboard with some headline figures. The gender split, age range, average age still at 46, not much change there. Also go into other characteristics such as disability, marital status, ethnic group, religion and belief, sexual orientation, carer's responsibility, gender identity and care experienced. Just a reminder that other than sex and age, which is mandatory to declare to your employer, all the other information is given on a voluntary basis, okay, by employees. There's regular communications issued on behalf of the HR service and the organisation to encourage staff to give us this further information, but again, it's on a voluntary basis. Appendix 2 provides more detailed overview of the workforce information and protected characteristics with comparison trends over previous years. I'm not going to go through the full detail, but there are a few exceptions I think worth noting. There does appear to be an increase in the employees who've declared they have a disability, an increase in employees who've declared from an ethnic group, and a slight increase of employees who've declared care and responsibilities, and some of them around maybe around improved information by asking individuals to provide that voluntary information, and some of the policies and arrangements we have in place as an organisation. Finally, I'll take you across to Appendix 3, where we include information on pay. So every employer with 250 or more employees are required to report their gender pay gap, and we've been reporting that since 2018. The gender pay gap for the council on the 31st of March 25 shows that women earn on average 89 pence for every £1 a man earns when comparing median hourly pay, and that position hasn't changed from last year. Although we're not required to officially report on pay gaps of disability and ethnic minority, we do include this information for these two characteristics in the report. And I think just before I go through those figures, it is worth noting that we are missing information on whether people have declared their protected characteristic in these two fields. But nonetheless, the disability pay gap shows that disabled employees earn £1.12 more for every £1 than a non-disabled employee, which is a real positive position. And with the ethnic position, the pay gap there shows ethnic minority employees earn 94 pence for every £1 that a non-ethnic minority employees earn when comparing median pay. So some positive steps there, again reflecting some of our policies and arrangements that we have in place as an organisation. So I'd just like to take you to the recommendation of the report and just note the content, please.
Thank you, Paul. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please, before I open up to questions?
Happy to move, Chair.
Thank you, Deputy.
Happy second, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. Can I invite members for any questions? I've got some for myself, but I'll wait till the end. Okay, Councillor Winstanley, please.
Hi, apologies for my voice. Obviously, one of the concerns with the report is the under-reporting that has been done. What efforts are being made to try and encourage people to report on the equalities data? And obviously, some data will go out of date because people, for example, may have a disability during their working life or caring responsibilities or even get married. So what efforts are being made to ensure that the data is up to date? Thank you.
Thank you. Paul, please.
Yeah, thank you. And it's a challenge we continually face in terms of the information. What we've started to do is more regular promotions on updating the information through our employee self-service platform. We are quite strategic in our timing of when we send out such reports to requests for information. And we're trying to go into the services to try and, where we can see it's underrepresented in terms of that information, is try and bring it through. What we're hoping over the coming period is that we can make this more digital by non-computer users being able to input that information, which is our challenge at the moment. We have great support from colleagues in ICT, but with licensing costs and everything else is proving a bit of a challenge. But we're hopeful in the coming period, of which I can't give you a definitive timeline, that we can start to promote the self-service platform where employees can access information and also update information.
Thank you. Moving on to Councillor Ross Thomas, please.
Diolch, Chair, and thanks Paul and officers for providing the information, which is really useful in terms of viewing the representation of employees across the county borough by the organisation. If I can just focus specifically around recruitment of disabled people, there's clearly a significant discrepancy between those who identify as disabled within the organisation and the wider population in Bridgend. That is quite significant in terms of percentages. There are any number of barriers potentially to disabled people seeking employment opportunities, many of which will not necessarily be perceived by non-disabled people. So I guess my question is, what is it that the council is doing specifically around encouraging applications from disabled people within or outside of the county borough to better reflect that body of people? I think it's really, really important that we try to close that gap so that Bridgend County Borough Council can actively say and positively say that we are a very good employer of disabled people, and that disabled people feel that they have equal opportunity in applying for jobs at Bridgend County Borough Council. Thanks.
Paul?
I think if we can answer the first part, I think we're doing our best to promote employment opportunities within the organisation to all groups. It's something we've really attempted to do this year, and try to do it in an appropriate way, because I know there's been requests of other areas. Specifically to disability, where Disability Confident Leader status was awarded this year. We have the guaranteed interview scheme as well that supports that. And I think in part recently we've undertaken HR briefings on recruitment, and that's a major feature in there to ensure there are no barriers to entry, any barriers for anyone firstly applying for a job, then attending interviews or attending assessment or whatever's required with that. We continue to reach out to groups, Bravo and other groups where we have representation, to try and get understanding from them on what we could do better, what we could take feedback from others as well, and try and promote as much as we can those opportunities with us. I think we see positive recruitment from all groups, but what we've got to continue to do is learn from their experiences and support where we can in terms of bringing people in to the organisation.
Thank you, Paul. Leader, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Paul, for the report. As Councillor Ross Thomas said, there's lots of useful, valuable data in there. And my question is, following on from Councillor Ross Thomas in a way, it's on the page 19 in relation to disability. And it's towards the bottom of the page, it's when it's, we're a disability confident leader employer, which is great. That last one paragraph refers to interviews being put in place for candidates require assistance, and it allows candidates to have sighted interview questions prior to interview. I don't disagree with that. There's lots of visible and non-visible disabilities. I'm just trying to understand the practicalities of how and when that applies, because you could go the other side of it from a quality point of view. There may be other applicants non-disabled, and one is having sighted interview questions. I take it where I read that prior to interviews, and the other isn't. I just want to know how you just discern separate sort of visible and non-visible disabilities, and how and when that clause will apply, or that. And the second question, just a point of correction on the chart on page 21. It's the age profile, which has the BCBC corporate chart, the BCBC schools, and then the BCBC total. But the males in the age range 16 to 19 seem to have disappeared off BCBC total, where I think we have 19 according to the corporate box. It shows 19 males, 31 females. When we get to BCBC total, the males have disappeared. But there's 42 female. On page, it's the age profile on page 21. That can be corrected.
Are you going to come back in, Paul? Yeah.
Okay. Take the second point first. Okay. The reason with the total that they've been excluded is that if we put the total there, the total is obviously will be less than 5. So adding the total to the 19 will then identify the numbers within there. But we can look at how we present that in future to make sure it's clearer for the committee. Going back to the first point in terms of reasonable adjustments. Where a matter is flagged to the recruiting manager on appointment, they will often seek advice from the HR service on how they can make arrangements for individuals who require supported interview. I think the example we've given there in terms of interview questions prior to the interview, we've had examples of neurodiversity where individuals have come in, and we've sought advice from relevant bodies. And for example, individuals get, much like students do in school, maybe a half-hour extra time at the start of the interview, so they're not necessarily having them overnight before, but it's just a reasonable adjustment to allow them to digest the questions in advance. So for example, they come in, they would have a half hour to read the questions in a controlled environment as well, so it's not they're taking them away elsewhere, then going into the interview as an example of that. Okay, cover that, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Paul, for that, and I understand, get that. The second point over the age range, I don't see how, I'm a bit lost as to why you don't show the total males in the age range 16-19, yet we do show the number of males 19 and the BCBC corporate. I'm a bit confused by the answer on that one.
Paul, if you look on page 21, the first box states 19. The second box doesn't. I'm assuming that's because it's under 5 in school. But then the total, should that not say 19 plus a star? Just.
Yeah. Apologies, yeah, we can include that, yeah. Fine.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Evans, please, next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. If I could just sort of like draw your attention to page 24, it's around the e-learning models. And, you know, I really respect the fact that these e-learning models take time and resource to develop. So thank you for that. I suppose for me, my concern is that there are only 25 employees that have actually undertaken the e-learning with regards to LGBTQ+. And I was wondering, do we understand why so little employees have actually, you know, taken that learning up? That's my first question. And I do have one other question, if you could oblige me, Chair. It's on page 31, and it's regards to the Welsh language. And actually there we continue to remain below the Wales percentage regarding Welsh language. Again, can I ask, what plans are in place to improve this, please?
Thank you, Councillor. Paul, are you going to answer that one, or Angela?
Okay, if I pick the e-learning question up first, if that's okay, please. I think with e-learning, the current module is not mandatory. Okay, so we have a list of mandatory modules that have recently been reviewed, and ensuring staff prioritise on that. But what we will be doing is when we relaunch, when we launch what confirmation of what the mandatory are, we will be promoting all the non-mandatory as well. So we're going to continue to do that and try and drive increase learning, increase the participation in the e-learning modules to improve numbers, and we're almost taking a refreshed approach on that in the coming quarters. Okay.
Can I ask when?
Second, sorry.
Yes, yes.
Second
can I just
question.
ask? Can I come back on that? Can I just ask when basically will you be actually providing the information on what training is mandatory? Because you said you're refreshing, aren't you, the system? And when will you be providing the information on what is mandatory for employees to do, please?
It'll be going out this month. So we've got a mandatory position at the moment. That's just been slightly updated to reflect some new modules and refresher timings, and then that'll be confirmed out by the end of June.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Thank you.
And the second question? I think it would be good, Paul, for us as the committee to have a list of what is mandatory. That would be great. So the second question, who's answering that? Paul?
Welsh language.
Do you want me to repeat it, Paul? Sorry, because it's...
Oh, it's okay. It's the Welsh language.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, because we continue to remain below the Wales percentage at the moment. And I just wondered what plans are in place to start improving that, please.
I think with all training relation to this, I think we have a staff network group in place. we continue to promote it via the L&D bulletin. And I think we've just got to continue our proactive approach to the promotion of Welsh language in the workplace. And also I think in terms of our recruitment around that as well, because it's not only our existing employees, it's those coming into the organisation. So doing our best to continue to promote all that. But I think what we've recognised today is we're asking a lot of our workforce in terms of training opportunities and what have you. So we just need to balance them with what they need to continue in their role.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I'm just wondering, Zoe, did you want to say anything on that question, because you're going to be presenting the annual Welsh Language Standard Review? Just wondering if you've got anything to comment on that particular question, please.
Yeah, sure. I was thinking actually probably something relevant would be that we do have a new staff forum for Welsh speakers, Welsh learners, and proficiency levels are irrelevant. And so that has been a very good forum, which has picked up in numbers quite quickly. So I think previously what learners were feeding back was not having an opportunity to practice the Welsh they were learning. Whereas now this forum that I've started is an opportunity for them to come along and just practice. So hopefully that'll be an additional thing that'll encourage Welsh learners. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe. Sorry to put you on the spot there then. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things, really. Firstly, further to Councillor Evans' point around people who haven't provided information around a lot of these questions, I think my question would be, because that implies that a lot of members of staff perhaps don't feel comfortable or feel like they are in a place where they are able to freely discuss their orientation, their beliefs, whether they're a carer, whether they're care experienced. And I think it's particularly concerning seeing the care experience number of having 5,515 members of staff who haven't declared it, when, you know, as an area, I'm sure a lot more of our officers have experienced care, and that does have an impact on the rest of your life. I speak from care experience. And I would really like to know what is being done beyond these headline numbers to ensure that BCBC has a proactive culture that encourages all of its members of staff to be true to themselves and to be open and feel free and open and supported by their employer. Second to that, if I may, Chair, just around gender identity. On the headline figures on the infographic on page 16, it identifies there are 11 members of staff who have identified their gender identity differs from their sex registered at birth. But then on page 18, there's then no statistics put for gender identification that differs from that registered at birth. And I just wondered why that was. I also wonder whether we need to think through how we are talking about this. I mean, obviously, I understand that trans rights are currently a very sticky issue. There has been advice from the ECHR, which I personally think is absolutely wrong and flies in the face of human rights. But what are we doing to make sure that members of staff who perhaps do have a gender identity that differs from their registered sex at birth feel supported and cared for within this authority? And what is the authority doing to ensure that in the face of a lot of hatred that we are being a very positive employer and going out there and making sure that trans people feel included and able to be who they believe they are? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And also to feel safe, isn't it? Who's going to respond to that one, please? Paul?
Okay, so I think three key points there. I think the first on care experience, it's a new characteristic, and whilst we regularly promote the requirement to complete the information, that is only really happened in the last year since it came forward. So it'll take time for us to gather that greater information. Back to my earlier point about how we bring all staff the opportunity to update our systems. We do promote it though when we put our communications out, asking staff to update a number of factors, including the new characteristic around care experience. But I think, noting the point, we need to try and do more to try and gather more information. I acknowledge that, but it's hopefully encouraging the workforce to give us that information so we can take that on. Jumping to the data, if I can. So that was on the dashboard in relation to gender identity. I think it was a number of 9 who had identified gender differs to what they were registered at birth. But when we go to the appendices, then obviously when that's split between male and female, it hits the magic number of being less than 5 or less. So therefore not presented, but noting how we present that in future to try and provide some re-information on that. And then I think the final bit about people feeling inclusive within the workforce, the opportunity to come forward with the issues they want to raise about anything. I think we're a good organisation of looking after people, and I think what we see is there's a number of policies where managers can gain support from the Human Resources Department or other sections in terms of ensuring people are appropriately supported in the workplace. We're aware, we're aware of cases that we've supported within HR, and again that positive promotion with line managers to ensure that where issues are raised to them, we need to make sure we support the managers, because it's the managers who support the employee, and also and support from other teams, because we have quite a diverse workforce, and we have diverse working arrangements as well. It's not everyone's based in an office. People are based in care homes, working, out in schools or working in, on the highways or what have you. So it's really important we support all managers with what's right for them and what's right for all employees really with that. And I think, what we'll see over future periods, future years, is that we continue to support with that, and we continue to grow our support to make sure, I think, everyone who works for the organisation feels included, safe and supported.
Thank you, Paul. Councillor Goodall, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Paul, for that response. I just want to dig in a little bit around, I take your point around the data, but I think what concerns me here is that we're sort of dealing in abstractions, and we're just looking at data collection. And what I really mean is, what are we doing to, this data should just be being used to identify what more we need to do. It's not a data collection issue. It's about ensuring that we listen to those members of staff, we hear from them, they feel listened to, they feel able to come and speak to this committee or to members or to their line managers or to directors about any problems they have, and to be open and fully active in their life as a person who works here. They should be able to be proud and open with who they are. I think promoting the data collection bit is fine, but the bit that I think we're missing is how are we ensuring that those individuals who are very small statistics in this, how are they being listened to? How are they being supported? What are we doing to ensure they do feel listened to? Because I think, and I actually would perhaps ask that maybe a report could come to this committee of a more qualitative nature rather than a quantitative nature of data collected from individuals who do come from protected characteristic backgrounds that can say, okay, well, actually, BCBC, yeah, they are really good at supporting me in this, and I do feel comfortable in this work, but this is where I think we could go next. This is how we improve it. This is how we get more people from my sort of background to work here and be proud to work here, because I think that is a really important point that I just don't want to get missed in the rush to collect more data. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Good. So there was an action point there, so hopefully we'll take that back and address that action point. And I think that's a really good idea. It's not just about stats, it's about people's feelings and thoughts. Thank you. Okay. Bring Councillor Evans in. She's going to gate crash.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair, on that. And thank you, Councillor Good, for that, because I absolutely agree entirely with what you were saying. I wonder if Anya would like to bring in and talk about the focus groups that actually are taking place at the moment as well. So we do different focus groups, don't we, Anya? So I would like to just wonder whether that's something that obviously might help. That work is being done in different areas to listen to obviously the views of employees.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. And I think, you know, yes, they are focus groups, and it'd be good to get that report that Councillor Good has suggested, because that can come from those focus groups to say, what more can we do? What do we need to do different? Anya, please.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. Thank you, Chair. The focus groups are actually... Sorry? Oh, thank you, Chair. For the record of the meeting, I'm Anya Richards. I'm Group Manager for Communications and Public Affairs. Thank you, Councillor Evans, for the question. The focus groups were actually something that we did last year in response to the staff survey that we had. So we don't currently have any further focus groups planned. It was a very specific exercise, but we are redesigning the approach to the staff survey, so we may well do more in the future, and it seems like there could be a good fit with this particular issue that we have. Is that sufficient answer, Councillor Evans?
Thank you, Anya.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Deputy Leaders, thank you for being patient.
That's all right. Thanks very much. So first of all, thanks very much for the report. I'm really pleased to see care experience in here, considering my comments about the remit of the committee. If I can take you to information on pay. So we've got an awful lot of information here, and I know that on the agenda today we've got the Disability Employment Charter and we've got the Race Equality Action Plan. Further to Councillor Good's comments, I think it's important to note that an employee has actually contacted me in relation to the personal independent payments and the impact that is going to have on some of our disabled workforce. Now, I am in communication with him. I think the problem that I have is, have we done any work on the impact on our staff of these cuts? Because it will have an impact. Those welfare benefits actually enable some of our workforce to come into work and to live a normal, functioning, contributing life to society. I'm really concerned about the debt management, especially for some of our workforce. If they are in this position, it is going to spiral. They're going to lose anything between £400 to £900 a month. That is really significant in the impact of our workforce, and I think that's something we need to consider going forward. How are we going to support them? I think that's something that I don't want an answer to today, necessarily. I think it's something that we are going to have to do a piece of work on as to how we support our own workforce. And considering, I suppose for me, there's something for us as a council is what work have we done around the the welfare reform? What engagement have we had? What information have we given to Welsh Government? There is a consultation out now. I think it's one of those that we really need to consider and do a submission from the county borough, please, Chair. And that is my recommendation for today. Thanks very much. But I'm really happy with this report. It's really nice to see some of this information. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Deputy. So we have another action point and recommendation, please, that we need to report back at the next meeting, if that's okay. I'll move on to now Councillor Elaine Winsley again, please.
Yes, sorry for coming back. I wanted to raise a few questions around the Welsh language, and thank you, Councillor Evans, for the questions that you've already raised on this. I was also very interested to hear that you are adopting the Disability Confidence Scheme. That's really good. I also work for an organisation that is doing work on that as well. But I've also been speaking to colleagues in RCT, and they also have a Welsh language confidence scheme that if you're a Welsh language speaker, then you also get a guaranteed interview for a job, and that's increased the number of Welsh speakers in that authority in a huge manner. And it's certainly something that would be worth considering, that for candidates who've got the minimum standards so they can do the job, can be then have a guaranteed interview. I was really interested to hear about the forum. I'd love an invitation, Zoe, so please add me in. That would be great. And I've done lots of work on similar schemes elsewhere. I also recall that members had an email asking them about their equality data for adding in, and I don't know if that data has been included within the BCBC figures. And it'd be good to know that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I didn't see a question there. Was there a question in there?
One at the end.
One at the end. Thank you, Paul.
Okay, so thank you for noting the points about the Welsh, and certainly take that away. The elected members completing the information has been requested. I think that was something the committee had requested previously, to gather that information. That has been gathered. It isn't a feature of this report, but we can consider what we include going forward.
Thank you, Paul. I think Deputy wanted to come in on that.
Yeah, specifically around data for elected representatives, because from next year it will all be collected. They're starting with the Senedd next year. All the data of everybody who is elected will be collated, anonymised and disseminated. So that will be coming through for councils as well, that I'm aware of. So that information will be forthcoming, but we're not workforce, so I wouldn't expect it to be included in that data as well. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Jones?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Please bear with me. I've got a bit of a summer cold. I'm sorry if I'm sneezing in between some of the questions that have been posed today. Can I thank officers for the report? And when we look at the report on page 13, paragraph 2.1 outlines our statutory responsibilities, which is good. And then paragraph 3, again on page 13, goes to identify 3 particular appendices, which talks about, for example, protected characteristics, equality, and then pay gaps. There is in the report a huge amount of information which is very detailed, very complex, and very necessary. But if I'm to try and add some value and support to moving forward, I just pose this. What are we good at in terms of promoting equality across the county borough? How do we celebrate that? How do we sustain that? And more importantly, how can we further improve on promoting equalities? Secondly, of course, conversely, what are we not so good at? What are our weaknesses? And there may be some very, very compelling factors as to why we're not particularly good at promoting equality in the workplace. But importantly, what are we doing to address that? Which take us on to what opportunities exist to address in perhaps our weaknesses. And then it comes to the big issue here. What are the threats to the organisation? Because if we're particularly weak in one aspect of promoting equality, are we then being vulnerable in terms of our statutory obligations? To some extent, I'm probably leaning towards action planning, identifying the good, the bad, what we're not so good at, and how we can address it. And I think for me, that is a better way forward than sitting here looking at individual issues, which are justified, and I accept that. But it's looking at, as we move forward, what are we good at, what are we not so good at, and how can we address that. And I think for me, that is the right way forward, because I've got all this information in front of me, but I'm a little bit confused of what is good, what is bad, and how we're addressing it. I hope that makes some sense, because I think, if anything, if we do have that plan in place, it'll be transparent, it'll stand independent scrutiny, and people can actually see that we're taking this overview and strategic view of our responsibilities to equalities in the workplace. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think sounded like another recommendation and action there for me. And I do, for me, because I do have dyslexia, for me an action plan works so much better because I can see exactly what the task is, how we got there, have we got there or not. I don't know if that's something we can add to the end of this workforce report as an action plan. I don't know. Who wants to talk on that, please? I don't think this is about a corporate action plan. I know we do have a corporate equality action plan. I know that it's in here, but this is more about the workforce action plan in regard to equality. Paul? Yeah. I don't know what's happened. My mic won't go off and Paul's mic won't come on.
There we are. Call the question. I think back to the point. Obviously, we've got the strategic qualities plan, and I note the point. And I think it is about what workforce actions sit within that, and how we can bring them to life for improvement on, I think, a number of features of what we've already discussed today, and including what Councillor Jones put across.
I think what we were looking at maybe a separate action plan just regarding the workforce rather than the corporate one, because corporate one will address all the issues in the organisation. This is just about the workforce. That's what I think. I'll bring Councillor Jones back in so he can explain it more.
I just want to make the final point. I don't think this is an officer responsibility. I think elected members have a responsibility as well. The trade union movement also have a responsibility. There needs to be collective responsibility to moving forward in the right direction. Yeah, I don't want to be sitting here. I hope I haven't come across sitting here pointing the finger. Hopefully not. I think there's a collective responsibility. Officers, the trade union movement, elected members, and any other relevant stakeholder moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for indulging me to come in again. I just wanted to, take up Councillor Jones's point really on threats to the organisation, and I just thought it was worth mentioning the age profile of BCBC as a corporate body. I note that only a third of BCBC staff is under 40. And there are slight increases there, which is positive to see. I mean, I should note that no member of the Cabinet is under 40, but that's a bit of a side note. None of you getting any younger. And that, in fact, about 25%, so a quarter of our workforce as a corporate body are 56 or over. So I just really wanted to dig into that because, that is something that should be looked at as a corporate threat. We do need to have good young people who see BCBC as a career opportunity, as a great place to work, as somewhere they can build their career. And I just really wanted to dig into that as to what work is being done to encourage people who are either leaving school or leaving university or leaving training and see BCBC as a great place to work and to, as something that can help them build the borough they live in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. You've stolen one of my questions, but you've phrased it so much better than I was going to do. All I was going to ask, what is our
It's my age, Chair.
What kind of progression planning do we do in this authority? Paul?
Yeah, thank you. In future workforce reports that the committee will receive, you'll see a bit more detail on age profile, and something we've been looking at directly with CMB. In terms of the age profile, where they are within the services and looking at some of the professions and the impact on. So we are a large organisation. We have varying jobs within the organisation. We are looking to, well, we're not looking, we are promoting us as an employer across schools. So part of the learning development team and an OD team, they go out, it's an officer that goes out to schools, works with people who are soon to be school leavers in terms of what career opportunities are with us for the organisation. We've got a grow your own schemes in terms of apprenticeships, graduates that we can bring in. I think looking at when you start to drill into some of the age profile, and we can give you some examples of this in future meetings, you'll start to see there are certain trends, certain professions lend themselves to a higher age, whereas some we could bring in. I think the one bit we've noted in looking at this information is because of our size, it would take significant number, high number of turnover and a high number of recruitment in certain areas to buck that trend. It isn't something that will happen over the short term. There are changes as well coming in, just to note in terms of minimum pension age as well, which is increasing from 55 to 57. So by that very nature, we are likely to see people remaining within the organisation for a little bit longer, those 2 extra years, on the basis they can't draw down their pension early until 57, not necessarily 55 where it is now. So there's a number of challenges around that, but something we are looking at and looking to grow our own through various methods.
Thank you, Paul. I do have several questions myself, but just to link in with that one, how do you link in with employability? Because obviously that's their role, isn't it, to bring people in, get them into jobs and things like that. So do you, and especially with care leavers, do you link in with the employability team?
Yeah, there's continual work. Yes, should have recognised that. Sorry, it's almost standard practice now that we work alongside employability. So where we've got hard to fill posts, or the other way, where individuals are looking for employment, we try and join up those opportunities to bring people into the workforce and support work with employability on jobs across our organisation.
Because I know they do a job fair in September, usually for school children leaving that. Okay, so I've got several questions. Do you want to ask them all, or do you want to ask them one by one? Okay, so my first question, which links in that I'm very disappointed that we've only had 25 staff training on LGBT plus e-learning. So 2 questions on that is, who decide what is mandatory? And on page 17, we've got introduction course, which is all mandatory to equality and diversity. What does that include? What courses does that include? And how do we ensure all the characteristics that we've talked about that comes under equality become mandatory courses, not just selection few? So that's the first question. My other question on disability is really, I'm really pleased to see that we offer reasonable adjustments for candidates coming for interview. What I'd like to know is, what is our response time to staff who require reasonable adjustment? We've already talked about progression. You'll be glad to know that was the last of my question. I thought I had more, but they've been answered, asked already. Thank you.
So I think picking the first question, the e-learning, LGBT and who decides. So it's reviewed at CMB in terms of the Corporate Management Board, in terms of what's mandatory and what isn't, and the timings around that. But again, that's linked to sort of national and other guidance in terms of that. Okay, so for example, some of the safeguarding, they come down from the National Safeguarding Board, some come from the Information Commissioner in relation to GDPR. So it's pulled together on that basis in terms of that. But noting, I think the low numbers, that we will do improved communication and promotion on that with the e-learning. The reasonable adjustments question was in relation to existing staff, not new staff coming in. Yeah. So again, as I mentioned earlier, managers will pick that up in the first instance. So if there's a reasonable adjustment needed within the workplace, they will receive support from human resources, as well as occupational health or other sort of professional groups or settings that provide support, as well as the health and safety department. Again, they provide support on that as well. So it's a sort of joined up approach to ensure once a need is identified, support is given, funding's available for modification or equipment or whatever the reasonable adjustment is needed to ensure employees able to carry out their duties in a safe manner. So
is the CMB that decides on what mandatory courses are. Yeah. So does the committee want us to take that forward and ensure that all the characteristics under the equality are mandatory? No, LGBT plus isn't a mandatory course, but we can ask CMB to ensure that it is. Councillor Good, did you want to come in here?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wonder, I mean, I think everyone should do the LGBTQ plus training, but I'm also mindful of time of officers and, I think, it's easy to say, oh, everyone should be made to do this training, but actually, as someone who has done online training modules ad nauseum for various jobs I've had in the past, you don't pay attention, you click through it, you find the right answer, you pass it, you don't pay attention. And I don't want it to be looked at as this is a silver bullet to solve issues. So while I understand and I think it's the right direction that the committee is suggesting, I think this should be led really by corporate officers to see what is effective and what isn't effective, because forcing all members of staff to undertake an LGBTQ plus training course, one or two might learn some stuff, and that's great. Some people might react in a completely opposite direction and say, why on earth do I have to learn about this? And actually, in the environment that we currently exist in, which is becoming more dangerous for LGBTQ plus people, I'm not sure that people feeling forced into this is necessarily the right way forward. And I wonder if actually officer time might be better spent finding other ways to encourage equality and inclusion in the workforce, rather than something that essentially becomes a tick box exercise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Good. Good points. Leader?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It follows on partly from what Councillor Good said. Then I think perhaps to date we've just found out that CMB have been deciding what's mandatory, what's not mandatory. There's questions about who completes them, and we have to push for members themselves to complete some of the online courses. So I'd like to think perhaps we should be having a CCMB paper to discuss this further. Exactly what is the best way to do training in authority? I know online has been the preferred option since COVID, and lots of people pushed that way. But I think we should review the rule practice of what people are required to train, what's mandatory, and how best do we get that training done. And that's something that I think Cabinet should be discussing with CMB, and then possibly bring it back to this committee. But that needs further discussion from a Cabinet point of view with CMB.
Thank you, Leader. Another action point, please. Thank you. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. Everybody in favour of the report?
Aye.
Thank you. Moving on to the next agenda item, item 6, violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence. And that's going to be, who's presenting that? Kirsty, thank you.
Bora Darren, thank you, Chair. I'm Kirsty Williams, Partnerships and Community Safety Partnership Manager, and I'll be presenting alongside Wendy Ross this morning. Wendy is the Voucher SV Manager for BCBC, who will be discussing the case studies as we go through the report. The report is an overview of the work to address violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, otherwise known as Voucher SV, undertaken by BCBC and the ASIA Domestic Abuse Service in the last 12 months. It broadly provides an update on the report received by committee last year. I have been made aware that the delivery plan, Appendix 1, has not transferred well when the agenda pack was created. So for this I apologise, and I understand it will be corrected. The background sets out the legislative context for the work at the UK and Wales specific level to address the range of forms that domestic abuse can take. Brienne's work is part of the delivery of Cymtath Morgannwg strategic aims as required under the Voucher SV Act. These aims are listed in the report and form the basis of the local version of the delivery plan included as Appendix 1. The development of the current ASIA service and structure has been a process of a few stages, covering bringing the service in-house, introducing a new framework and developing a specialist roles to meet identified need. In June 2024, the ASIA service achieved the Safe Lives Leading Lights accreditation. This is a mark of quality for domestic abuse services and is increasingly being recognised by commissioners and funders across the UK. The Leading Lights accreditation programme offers services, partner agencies and commissioners a set of standards for supporting victims of domestic abuse and ASIA is currently the only local authority maintained domestic abuse service to hold the accreditation in Wales. As part of maintaining that accreditation, a further review of the service identified a need for a second team leader for the team, which would also allow the team leader to work more strategically. The second post was filled from within the team, allowing an opportunity for advancement. The manager has since been able to support the region by acting as a reviewer on an offensive weapon homicide review, taking on vice-chairing of the MARA Quality Assurance Group, and look for more opportunities to be more involved in influencing Welsh Government policy. All corporate performance indicators, covering contacting referrals within a recommended timeframe, conducting case reviews, and perceptions of improved safety following engagement with the service, are being met. There is a high-risk support service within ASIA, led by one of the team leaders. That team leader also attends a daily domestic violence arrest, or DVA, to be updated on any relevant incidents or overnight arrests. This information sharing allows the service to work more preventatively, such as ensuring that any person arrested is not going to be released and returned to the victim's address. As you can see in 3.7, and apologies for referrals being accepted being upside down, if you've noticed that, the number of people being referred and accepting support has continued to increase, as has the spectrum of support needs. The specialisms in the service continue to work to meet these needs, recognising that it is not a one-size-fits-all service and that there are bespoke support needs. For example, the older person at the IDVA works with victims over 60 or 55 plus in some circumstances to manage the often more complex nature of the abuse, such as dementia and caring roles. The IDVA has also undertaken training on working with the hard of hearing. The IDVA works closely with services which can provide support where there is sexual abuse or violence. I'll hand over to Wendy now to go through that case study.
Sorry. Hi there, thank you. This is a case study now for an older person's, and it's just to highlight really the complexities. Obviously, with an older person's story, it can be the carer that's the abuser, or it can be, as in this case, it's the carer that's being abused by the person that they're looking after. This is a gentleman. This gentleman was in his 80s and had been married to his wife for many years. He was supported to contact ASIA in November 2024 by a carer's wellbeing service, and he was allocated to the older person's IDVA in January 2025. The background to this, he'd had a good relationship with his wife, but reported a change in her behaviour towards him, belittling him, provoking arguments, and making accusations. He believed he was made to feel like he was going crazy, or as people with terminology that now, that would be, he felt like he was being gaslighted. Eventually things became physical with his wife. She was throwing things at him, and eventually this resulted in a hospital treatment through an assault where it was escalating. Whilst he was in hospital, he was then referred to adult services. Adult services assessed the wife as requiring some care, which he was happy to carry out. The case was then closed to adult services, and he returned home, and his wife's care needs increased, as did the abuse towards him. He found the challenges in his wife's behaviour difficult to understand and accept, as it was very different in their relationship. The changes progressed slowly and subtly, so for a long time were unnoticeable, until eventually it just kind of dawned on him exactly what was going on, and he found this unbearable. Family were unable to give helpful advice, and there were difficulties in accessing support. The gentleman became more isolated as he tried to manage his wife's behaviours. He still loved his wife and did not want to lose her to friends or get into trouble if he told people about her behaviour. He reached out to his GP as he was struggling to manage his increasing injuries and decreasing mental health. He was referred to a carer's wellbeing service, and after a few visits, the support worker felt he was at risk of further abuse from his wife, and he was supported to attend ASIA drop-in service to speak with an IDVA to support around domestic abuse. On assessment, he was given a safety plan with suggestions on how to de-escalate situations, and he learned when and how to find a place of safety. Further investigation from the IDVA, she identified or believed that the behaviour changes could be the onset of dementia. So a referral was made to support services by the IDVA and the GP, and the wife was assessed of having had starting the onset of dementia. The results of this, the introduction of services made it easier for him and his family. The IDVA was able to apply for benefits and funding for new appliances that helped to make life easier. Regular professional meetings were set up to discuss and address any issues arising as soon as possible and to share information where appropriate. Further safety plans were discussed and agreed with the gentleman to continue to assess his own safety and keep himself and his wife safe. He's now aware that he can contact the IDVA service and other support workers and adult safeguarding at any time should he need to in the future. So his case is now closed to us, but there was an awful lot of work done to ensure his safety and his wife's safety and get the care that she needed. Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy. There is a court IDVA to support victims navigating the criminal justice system. To quote a recent note of thanks to the team, the IDVA held me up during court trials. Hartshorn House in my stake has a remote evidence suite, which has been utilised for civil cases and family court where suitable. This relieves any burden on that person attending court and any discomfort they may feel. A children's IDVA, or CHIDVA, is host employed by Safe and Merthyr Tydfil, who act as the regional Vowdr SV lead. They work with those aged up to 15 who have experienced familial abuse. The in-house children and young persons IDVA role was funded to address the identified need there. Funding for this role has ended. In the period of the CYP IDVA being in post, there were over 40 referrals, 39 of which were taken forward. The IDVA also worked closely with youth services and provision to provide support on healthy relationship, and in doing so made connection across services and across council departments. These will be maintained as much as possible, but there is no current provision for supporting young people affected by intimate abuse. Staff have undertaken cultural competencies and link in with support services and agencies such as APOCO for the Polish community in Bauzo. All staff are trained in honour-based violence and female genital mutilation. As mentioned in the report, we have noticed an increase in the number of people requiring translation services to access our support, and we are keen to understand the reason for this trend. Drawing you to 3.14, the service has continued to see an increase in the number and proportion of male victims accessing support. The male victim IDVA works with these men and coordinates the male victim focus group. There were 25 attendees for this group in 2024-25, meeting monthly and discussing topics, meeting guests which was selected by those attendees. Feedback from the group is positive, the opportunity to share and learn is welcomed, and more sessions have been set up, as well as the hope to recovery to help male victims recover from their experiences. There is a male victim case study available as Appendix 3. The service recognises that people need support to address multiple and sometimes co-occurring issues, and for this reason there are commission arrangements in place with new pathways to provide specialist sexual violence support for those needing it, and with BAROD to work with victims and perpetrators where there are substances involved. Staff are also trained to support members of the LGBTQ+ community, seeking support and work closely with Myriad, which is a buy and for service. Table 3.19 shows the number of LGBTQ+ people access and support remains fairly static. Work to address perpetrator behaviour with tiered support services considered depending on the level of risk and history of offending continues. The high harm, high risk and serial perpetrators are considered for drive, and there is a dedicated IDVA working closely with the service to achieve improved outcome for both victim and perpetrator. Again, I'll hand over to Wendy to take you through the case study for the drive.
Thank you. Just in case anybody isn't aware, the drive service is a perpetrator service from SMT, Safe and Merthyr Tydfil. So they do all work with high risk, high harm perpetrators, and we have a dedicated IDVA then that sits alongside that. So whilst the work is being done with the perpetrator, the victim is supported by us. So if there's any behaviour changes, if any risk escalates, we've got that wraparound support for both. And also the relationship between the both is fantastic. They do some really good work together, disruptive activities. There's just, if there's, I can't remember the term now, mind blank when they're saying they're engaging and they're not engaging. So, disguised compliance. So you get to see everything, so you're picking things up from early on. This is just one of the case studies from that. So this woman had been in a relationship with the alleged perpetrator for several years, and they had children together. The couple originally met overseas and then moved to the United Kingdom after they married. At the beginning of their relationship, things were good. They got on well, but she noticed her partner becoming very controlling. He was always very angry towards her and on occasions became physically abusive. Following an incident involving police, this case was discussed in Marek, which brought this to the ASIA's attention, and the case was allocated to Drive. All work with the victim was carried out via a translator. She was living here on a spousal visa and had no recourse to public funds. So we've done some significant work via the interpreter, and after completing safety plan and initial safety work, ASIA helped her access support from a solicitor. The IDVA helped also to make the application into the DVC, which is DDVC, which is Destitution Domestic Violence Concession via the Home Office, for an indefinite leave to remain, and while she was living there on a spousal visa, which had been used as a form of control. After this was granted, she was able to access local authority housing and homelessness assistance, because until we got that, they can't claim benefits. There's no duty of care from anyone. So we had to make sure this was put in place. Generally, it's put in place for 3 months from the Home Office whilst they get their full visa to remain. Whilst looking at suitable accommodation, the IDVA was also to help with budgeting. The victim felt the need for longer-term support. Work was completed with her around recognising domestic abuse and the effects it has on children. This was carried out on a one-to-one basis with an interpreter, due to her not having English as a first language, which meant she would have struggled to attend the Freedom Programme. This intense work allowed her to understand what had happened to them and how lives will improve when the abuse is removed. She was provided with an IDVA's direct number should she need to make contact, and the DV helpline number is also given to service users should they need support and advice during out of hours. And again, she's now closed, and as far as we know, living well. Thank you.
So as demonstrated through the report, there is a keen interest in providing early intervention, trying to work preventatively and providing holistic support to the victims of domestic abuse. The service works hard to engage local businesses, to promote and engage the service, and this was evidenced at the White Ribbon campaign, which saw a total of over £1,700 raised, whilst engaging men and boys to prevent violence against women and girls. The event also demonstrated and strengthened partnership working. And I'd like to give special thanks to South Wales Police and PCSOs Natasha Jenkins and Michelle Rees, who were really with us and worked very hard to make that event a success. The service will build on this over the coming year, with some detail in the delivery plan, Appendix 1, on how this will be achieved. Many thanks. I take you to the recommendation that Cabinet Committee Equalities and Employer Relations note the contents of this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsty. Very, very in-depth report, and the case studies are so moving. Thank you. So the first person I've got on my hands up is the Deputy, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks very much, Kirsty and Wendy. I always look forward, that seems really wrong to say that I want to hear about the domestic violence service that we have within the county borough. But I'm really pleased to hear that the male perpetrator service is now developing to such an extent that it's proving results. I think anything to do with domestic violence is very much a hidden service. I think it's important that we acknowledge what work our staff do. I suppose that's one of the questions I have for you, is what support do we offer to our officers, considering the vicarious trauma that I know they will suffer listening to some of these stories and supporting these residents. And I am interested in the not Welsh or English first language, and how many other languages do we need to employ to translate services. I think that's something that we may need to keep a watching brief on, and something that we may need to develop further services for, particularly information sharing and stuff like that, if we know that there's other opportunities out there for people to gain support. I think it's really important that we know victims feel very much disenfranchised, very much hidden, and they feel that it's all their fault, and quite often it's not. They're a victim of circumstance, they're a victim of education from way back when. And it could be from mum and dad or nana and granddad, and that's the way they live their life. It is very much normal, and it's very much not. There's lots of years of coercion, gaslighting, and often physical and sexual violence that go along with that before people disclose to us. I think it's really important for everyone out there to know that isn't the place that you need to stay in. I lived under a public protection order for 20 years, and I'm in the position that I am today because of all the support from services around me. And I think it's really important that we know that, and those services are very much visible. I'm happy to move with the report, Chair. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Deputy. There was a question there, wasn't there, Wendy, please?
Yes, thank you, and I couldn't agree more. Thank you. As far as the workforce goes, we have obviously line management supervision every 4 to 8 weeks. There's case reviews that are every 4 weeks, so we go right through the case reviews. So if they're struggling with case, I mean, first and foremost is an open door policy anyway. So nobody has to wait for supervision, nobody has to wait for case reviews. I never want a time where I have a worker going home that's got things going around in their head, because that's not healthy for anybody. And they know that, and they know they just come in. Half the time when we get to supervision, people are like, I haven't got much to say really, and that's how I like it, because I know people are going home okay, they're going home safe. So yeah, so there's open door policy, there's supervision every 6 to 8 weeks. The case reviews, we had clinical supervision up until December, I want to say. Everybody as a collective within that team in their appraisals and everything said that they felt that that clinical supervision wasn't working for them. So and I think they will still benefit from clinical supervision, but it's about finding the right person. And in this case, it was as a collective that it wasn't. So we've now looking at somebody else now for clinical supervision. And whereas before, now we've got the 2 team leaders, and we've got the team into two teams, like the high risk team and the assessment and community team. When we do the clinical supervision going forward now, which will happen, I suspect, probably by July-ish, it will be that they will have 1 month, they will have individual clinical supervision, and then the next time then, alternatively, they will have group supervision, but it will be with their own small teams. So any issues coming up within their teams, then they can discuss that. So the clinical supervision will be coming back in. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. And it's good to hear that that there is an open door policy where the staff can just come in and talk. You know, I think you do that to staff, you'll get 120% back from them. Thank you. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just first of all, on a sort of, I guess, an administrative point of view, I just want to say to Kirsty and Wendy and anyone else involved in writing this report, and to all officers listening, this is exactly what I want from a report. This says everything I need to know in a really clear way. It covers off everything. It does it really, really well. So I think that's something I just wanted to say, because I think too often I read reports where I'm like, I haven't got a clue what's going on here. And this was a really, really good and well-written report. So I just wanted to put that on record. And beyond that, you know, I just sort of want to say that I'm really pleased with this report. I think it's a really positive thing to hear the positive work that's happening in a very, very difficult area. The way you've described it as a holistic approach, I think, is really key. It's obviously having positive effects. And I think also I really appreciate that the report and the presentation highlights the impact of sexual violence and domestic violence against men, which is often forgotten and is significantly increasing, or at least reporting is significantly increasing, which has to be viewed as a positive. So I just thought it was worth noting that, and I really appreciate that in this presentation. And I think, you know, I just want to say really thank you to Wendy, Kirsty, the entire team for all of their work, and also to thank the deputy leader, who I know has spent a long time over the last 3 years and prior to that pushing this forward and making sure that this has the time it should have before us as a council. So I just wanted to put those on record, really, and thank you for all the hard work and all the positive results that it's bringing.
Thank you, Councillor Good. I think that's one of our negative aspects. We don't shout when we do some really, really good work, and hopefully today maybe we'll put something out on the media to say how good this report is and what we do as an authority. Leader, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And first off, again, thank you, Kirsty and Wendy, and your team that goes on behind the scenes. perhaps we don't need to see, don't want to see sometimes, but we need to understand what is going on and the great work that is done behind the scenes. And one of those examples in 3.1, it shows that last year the Astra service achieved the Safe Lives Leading Lights accreditation. Now, whether we shouted enough for that last year, maybe, I can't recall if we did do any publicity. I think we may have announced something, but again, we need to celebrate the achievements. I think that was, I may still be the only service in Wales that achieved that, if I'm correct, yeah. So that's, you know, the first in Wales to achieve that, which is a marvellous thing to achieve. On that Safe Path report 3.4, it talks about the drop-in service. I'm just wondering, we've got the Garrow Valley there, the Maester Llynby Valley. It doesn't mention the Ogmore Valley. We have Ogmore Valley Life Centre. I'm just wondering if there's a drop-in service. Because it says in the report that the drop-in service are not limited to what those mentioned. I'm just wondering, we do have Ogmore Valley Life Centre, and whether there's an opportunity, or if anything takes place there, which would be useful. And we can't cover everywhere, and we have the base here. And the last point to make, I think, is for us as Cabinet to take away, discuss further when it comes to the budget at the end of this year. The service relies on grants, which is worrying. I'm never convinced that grants are the sustainable long way forward. It talks on the financial implications, with the service largely funded through housing support grants of South Wales Police, and vowed as the related to Welsh Government grants. That's never a great sustainable way forward, and we need to perhaps look as a Cabinet and a Council when it comes to the budget then, is whether or not that should be more part of the core budget and not reliant on grants long term. That's the way it is now, but we need to perhaps look at alternatives, because we need to sustain the service going forward and make sure it's there as part of the core business of this authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Did anybody respond to that?
Thank you very much, and also thank you, Councillor Good, for your comments as well. Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you, Leader. As far as we try to branch out to every area, and we initially found that we were basing ourselves in different places. One afternoon here, one afternoon there, one morning here, but we found that wasn't good use of our time, so we kind of stopped that. What we tend to do now is those spaces are available for us to utilise, and that will include most places, but it's victim-led. So for us, it's whatever is the right thing for the victim, and we will travel to wherever they need us to go. But we've got branches out to everybody. We've contacted all the life centres and everything, so they all know who we are. Sometimes we'll go into GP surgeries and we will use consultation rooms, so we just go everywhere we can. It's all victim-led and will always remain that way. And also, thank you very much for thinking about the budget towards the end, because it is always grant-led. That's why we've lost our IPVA, our Young Persons Violence Advocate, which is a huge gap, because with SMT, the CHIDVA, they will deal with up to 15 years old, so anybody from 16 years old is deemed as an adult in domestic abuse services. And so, within that, you'll have care leavers and everything that's not being represented as they should be. And we need that service back in, because as far as the CHIDVA service goes, they will only deal with familial abuse, so that's only abuse within the household. It's not dealing with healthy relationships. It's not dealing with 14-year-olds. So if things can be considered within the core budget, that would be really appreciated. But I understand that there's it's huge, and that's far too political and out of my remit. Thank you.
Thank you. I think what would be useful, Wendy, if you or Kirsty could do a paper together with like budget pressure thing, because I think that's what most departments are doing, coming to us with budget pressure, explaining why we need it, and that would be really, really useful for us. Another action point. Councillor Good, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, with a different hat on, if you ever need somewhere in the Ogmore Valley, the Mem Community Centre will give you lovely cups of tea and a very nice, warm and welcome reception. But I probably should declare a personal interest on that as the Chair.
Did anybody say? I know I had a mover.
Probably second. Oh.
Yep, so we've had a mover, we'd have seconded. I've got one question, if that's okay, and then we'll break for 5 minutes break, because we've been going for over an hour and a half now. 3.8, the third paragraph. I was just wondering writing to somebody who may be going through a domestic abuse, living with the abuser, and we're sending them a letter and a safety plan. Just wondering, is that safe? That's the third paragraph on 3.8, please.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, it's a very valid point. The only time we would ever do that is if we have a PPM, which is a public protection notice from the police. If we've received a public protection notice, then we know that both the victim and the perpetrator is aware that the police have been involved and the police will refer to our services. That's the only time we would ever, and then we would only be sending that letter and safety plan if we've made every effort to try and contact that person by phone, by email, looking to see, when it goes to Marek, looking to see who else is involved in that family. If there are other ways in, we've gone in with housing before now, we've gone in with health visitors before now, so we will go in any way we can. If we are left in a situation where we're not able to contact that person, and if there's been police involvement, because a letter will always state, we have had a referral from the police to say that there's been an incident. So if the perpetrator ever reads that letter, it's never a thing that you've asked for this, or so it keeps them completely safe. And that's the only time we'll do it, because then at least we know they've got some form of safety plan as well.
Great, thank you. So the report's been moved and seconded. Everybody in agreement?
Aye.
Can I suggest we take a 5 minutes comfort break, because we've been going for over an hour and a half. Thank you. So if we come back at